Previously on episode 5.
I got my acceptance letter. I remember I got it and I went and talked to my supervisor. One of the first things she said was, well, you're not going to be able to get your benefits. I said, I know, but I have to go. So the person that's supposed to come here to follow you can't come if you stay.
Welcome to episode 6, The Shift, Death of the Ego. We taped our episode May 2021. I hope you enjoy.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Boosie Teaches podcast. As we say here at Boosie Teaches, in a galaxy of learners, Boosie Teaches lights the way. As our host Tanya Busico says to her students, come on in, relax, we'll be here a while. Let's get started.
So this first season is about mentors, influential people in my life. Today we have my high school guidance counselor, Mr. Andrew Blackmore. Let me tell you a little bit how we met. I believe I was like a junior or senior. I think my junior year. And Mr. Blackmore was definitely so supportive. A lot of people talk about their high school guidance counselors telling them they can't do this, they can't do that. Not Mr. Blackmore. When I was in high school, I always appreciated Mr. Blackmore's belief in me. That even when there were times where I didn't quite believe in myself, I hear so many people have conversations just about how much your high school guidance counselor can make or break you. And so I'm really appreciative that Mr. Blackmore has been a part of my journey. And so let's get started. So my first question to you is, how are you?
I am excellent. I'm probably the best I've ever been right now in my life where I'm at.
That's great.
I haven't been happier. You know, it's been a long road from last time we talked, which was a while ago, but yeah, a lot has happened since then. I'm excited.
I understand.
So life is great. You know, I couldn't be any better.
That is great to hear.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you as a student. So the other thing with Mr. Blackmore was, and we mentioned this before we were taping, is how young he was when we met. I didn't realize how young he was when I was a student. I just knew he was very close, like right out of college. And so let's talk a little bit about what kind of student you were, either in secondary school, college, or both.
Sure. Yeah. So in high school, I was real average, honestly. I just cared about soccer. I just wanted to stay eligible for soccer, and I really focused on that more than academics. Back then, it was a little bit easier to get into college, so you didn't necessarily have to try as hard as you did when you were in school. But, you know, so I made it through. I did fine, graduated, and went to East Carolina. And in college, my first semester, I went in with all these messages from what I should be doing, you know, and so I started majoring in business, econ, which is not for me, you know. So after one semester, I realized quick, that's not right. And so my advisor was a psychology professor, and he goes, you need to be in psychology. He kind of explained some things to me. He had me take his class the next semester, and I just from there fell in love with psychology and child development. So then that's when it like clicked for me, and I actually cared about what I was learning, and I was an excellent student through college, and then in grad school, went back to Old Dominion for grad school, and that's where I studied counseling. So like in high school, I was real average. I did enough to get by, and then college, I cared, paid attention. I still procrastinated like most college students do, but I always got it done, and I had great grades, and went back, and then I just went straight through because when I was graduating undergrad, I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. I know I don't really want to go do a job that I'm not going to be happy doing, where a lot of people did that. And I said, I'll just stay in school. So that's why I just went straight through and went to Old Dominion. And, you know, they had 2 tracks, and it was either community counseling. I think this was community counseling or school counseling was the 2 different tracks you could do. So if you go school counseling, you could still be a community counselor. If you know, you graduate and you're like, I don't like the school thing, you could go be a community counselor back then. But if you did the other route, you couldn't be a school counselor. So for me, I was like, well, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to go school counseling. Then I realized I could coach soccer, coach golf, you know, and that kind of added to it as well. So that's kind of how I ended up on that path. It kind of just all fell into place, and I went with it, and that's how I ended up meeting you.
Yeah. That makes I'm glad that you said that. And I'm actually glad that you talked about going straight through. But I think for a lot of times, especially if you can get a grad assistantship where you can get your tuition paid, grad school is a great place for you to not hone your skills, but really think more deeply about your passions.
Yep.
The next question is thinking about purpose. So, what would you say is your purpose?
It's a very interesting question. I love that question. Now, I believe the purpose, everybody's purpose in life is, I think, to be happy, enjoy your life, and to get to a place where you're not trying to get somewhere else.
Right.
Right.
That's
so
good.
But as far as personally, I call that your dharma, which is like a spiritual principle of what your individual life purpose is. Like, I believe everybody has a dharma, and it's always with you. You're connected to it all the time. But we lose that because of all the ego things that get thrown at us, the competition in life. We are what we have instead of, people identify with these things that then become them. But then what happens if you lose those things? Who are you then?
Right.
So it's always there. I think the trick is surrendering to it and just getting your ego out of the way. So my personal purpose, I think, and I've always kind of, not always, but as I evolve, I felt like I'm here to help people. And, a lot of people will say that I want to help people. Well, what does that mean? It's like, how do you help people? Well, I feel like I have a gift or a purpose to be able to kind of pull the best out of people and get them back to themselves, who their true authentic self is, and then let them go from there and kind of redirecting. And one of the reasons I really loved being a guidance counselor. It was great. And for various reasons I left, but that was a place where I could really dive into that because, teenagers confused, it's like a lot happening. They don't know what to do with what's happening. And so I could see how, and it was, as it evolved, I'm looking inside myself about how it makes me feel. And it's exciting, when you kind of see that light bulb click in somebody's brain, or, they're like, oh, wow, I can do that. Or like, oh, okay. When somebody gets it. And as a professor, you probably have some moments like that where you're like, yes, that's it. You got it, So I think that's what my purpose is. Absolutely. Personally. My dharma is to kind of help people become their true authentic self and live a fulfilled life instead of a life of yearning for something that they don't even know what that something is. It's something that's not within them. It's outside them because they see it and they want it. So I think that's another definition of insanity, is believing that you need something that you don't already have. We have everything we need already. People see all these other things and they compare and they're like, oh, I need that house, or I need that car, or I need that, or whatever it is. But you don't. Everything you need is already inside.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Oh, wow. That's good.
That question is such a good question, and we could go on and on about it. But yeah, that's. I feel like that's where I'm at.
So to your point, this reality that we're not missing anything is so powerful. Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to chew on that myself.
Yeah. Especially for those situations, those freshman students, they have this image of what college should be, these expectations. And that's the problem, is that they created this in their mind, and then that doesn't match with what they expect. And that creates unhappiness, right? So then they're unhappy.
Let's go a little bit further in the questions. And so, how did you discover your purpose? So you said that you wanted to help people, and you talked about changing your major. But to your point now, what was your process like of this discovery?
Right. So I think it's a kind of an ongoing process, right? But it's being able to look inside yourself and really pay attention to how things make you feel. And when you feel enthused or enthusiastic or excited, you feel that bliss feeling, I feel like that's the universe talking to you. In that book, I just read a book called The Shift that talks about the word enthusiasm. So when you're enthusiastic, that's God speaking to you saying, this is your path. This is what you should be doing. And that's the way I felt, as soon as I started studying psychology and studying child development and actually getting into it just kept, building on itself. And then the discovery process is still ongoing. I think that's a lifelong thing. It's not like there's no end point to that. It just keeps going and building on itself and getting bigger and bigger. And then, as far as your brain and mind can take it, it'll go.
Right. To continue this questioning, so often when we think about purpose and how we discover it in the process, but can you talk a little bit about how it was confirmed in your life? Can you share a little bit more about this feeling? Like how did you know you were sure about it?
Well, it's like when I got into guidance counseling, for sure, I was like, this is it. Like, this is it. It's so great. I feel so good doing this, to be able to help somebody solve a problem or feel better about themselves, just to change their mindset from negative to positive. If you think about that on a macro scale, the ripple effects of that are infinite because attitudes are contagious. Negativity and positivity are both contagious. You feed off of what's around you. So in my brain, I'm thinking like, all right, if I can help Tanya be happier or be better at whatever in her mind, then she'll be better. She'll be a better friend. She'll be a better whatever she is. And then those ripples go out. And then, so like if I'm able to help somebody who has kids, they'll be a better parent. Their kids will be happier. They'll have better friends. It just goes on. And so the more I kept thinking about it, it kept being reconfirmed.
Right.
That was early, and then things happen and you might, I thought I was going to go a different track. And then that track actually led me back to the same thing that I was doing. And that's another confirmation for me is that like I had it, I was on it. Things got in the way in my brain and, ego messages. I should be making more money. I should be doing this. My friends are doing this and they're doing that and I'm not. And so I let that get in my way. But I don't think there's any accidents. Like there's no, that was all meant to be to get me to where I am now. And then things that are happening now are meant to be to get me to where I'm going. So just surrendering to it and let it happen. I think too many people look for like that thing, that ending, or that like I finally made it, or whatever. But I don't believe that's how it works. I think you create your world in your brain, and everything happens twice. It happens in your mind first, and then it happens in the world. So, it's almost our responsibility to continually confirm that, to make sure you're on the right path, and that goes into self-reflection and how do I feel, and if you're unhappy or you're feeling bad or your job you hate, whatever, then you're on the wrong path. That's just simple as that, and it takes a lot of self-reflection and diving deep to figure it out sometimes, but it's always there.
Right. Absolutely. I love what you said about the ripple effect, because once I started on my, as I call my healing journey, once I was sure about myself, Tanya, core Tanya, not expectations that everyone wanted me to be or do, that did make me a better person. First for myself. And I think that so often, even though if we think about having a life of service for others, but it's something about focusing on our own personal feelings and growth. And that's just great.
Yeah. You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Right. And people say that, but to feel it.
Yeah.
And to like taping this podcast has been filling for me. I love it. I love talking to people. I love connecting with people, but also I love the whole process of creating questions and producing it and, later editing, because that's something that fills my cup. And so So,
well, that's, I'll go back to your healing journey. That's something so many people need to do that don't.
Right.
that they look for shortcuts and they look for like easy ways to feel better and to be better and things, but you're doing it the right way,
Right.
healing from the
Right.
inside out.
Right. And I was forced to because of COVID, and really I lost many family members over last year. And
Sorry to hear
so it
that.
was, thank you. And so in that moment, and I'm the only minister of my generation in my family. And so it was like, you're the minister, you have to speak for us. And I knew that I needed to deal with my own grief. And one of my best friends talks about when grief shifts and how you almost become not almost, but it's like you are a new person and you're able to see things that you never saw before. And you're able to, see the world in a different way because now you're shifted. And it was the best thing. I mean, it just, it changed my life. I've been telling everyone, go to therapy
Yes.
and just do it for you. Do
Mm-hmm.
it for you.
And like mental health is such a big problem right now in the world.
Right.
So that's
Right.
another reason I'm going back to that,
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about career and mentorship. And so you talked a little bit about when you got your master's, but
Mm-hmm.
what made you stop there and not say, well, I want to go get my, I think it's LCSW or,
Or LPC. Mm-hmm.
or even go into psychology
Right.
back then?
Yeah. So the reason I went counseling versus psychology, first of all, was as I thought about it, I thought that it was because it was clinical psychology. It was the program,
Oh, okay.
which seemed somewhat depressing to me at
Okay.
that time. And so that's why I went the counseling route.
Okay.
Yeah. So, now I wish I would have gotten my LPC on top of the master's because I'm going back to get my
Mhm.
LPC now,
Okay. Okay.
which, it's a lot easier to going straight through than having to go back.
Can you
Like
share a little bit about a LPC,
LPC,
LPC?
licensed professional counselor. So it's a few classes post grad, and then you have to get a bunch of hours, client hours, seeing people, and then you have a national exam you have to take and pass the national exam, and then you're certified to be an LPC.
Okay.
So it's just a little bit extra.
Okay.
It used to be back in the day where everybody that had a master's in counseling was grandfathered into LPC, but that wasn't a thing when I was in school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad it's not because I feel like it's an
Okay.
extra level, and you should have some more deeper instruction and tools to help people.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of
Right.
And to answer your question, why I didn't do it, I don't really know. I think it was a lot of factors. Money was a factor. I was tired of being in school. Honestly, I was ready to get going. I was ready to work, and being a young man, it was actually a very good thing for me in the guidance counselor world because there weren't a lot of my type of people. They were mostly older ladies that used to be teachers, and so I had job offers before I even graduated, or interview offers. I had people that were offering me interviews before graduation because they needed men on the staff of counseling. The counseling department, in theory, is supposed to represent the population that it's counseling. So the population of Lansdowne, the guidance department should mimic that population. And Lansdowne did a pretty good job of that.
Right.
But
Right.
So that's kind of why I cut it off after the master's and went to work. Yeah.
Okay. I never know. I mean, now that you're saying that, I never even thought about how most of the guidance counselors were former teachers, which makes so much sense because before you were my guidance counselor, I had her name is Miss Stafford, and I think that she taught before. That is, I'm loving this. I'm learning so much along with everyone else. So you alluded to, and we don't have to go into too much detail, but you talked a little bit about shifting from counseling. Can you share a little bit about how you knew it was time to shift?
Right. So I was feeling it was in my 8th year of guidance counseling, and it was 2011.
Really?
So yeah.
Oh.
So the economy went down in 2008, 2009 timeframe, and guidance counselors were on the chopping block. Like lots of school systems across the country were firing their guidance counselors, trying to save money,
No idea.
So we had to justify
With
our
counselors?
existence. Counselors, yeah. And so we had this big grid on our desk that broke our days down into 15-minute increments. And then there was this long list of codes that, codes for whatever you were doing, scheduling, individual counseling, classroom guidance, whatever you were doing. And then we had to put those codes in the boxes for every 15 minutes. So we had to continually justify ourselves, which I would have been okay with. But on top of that, I didn't really get to do a lot of counseling. Like it was mostly lots of paperwork, making sure kids were in the right classes, changing schedules, soccer for me because I was coaching soccer. The actual counseling part was mostly like I got into it like how we did with college admissions. That's where I kind of had an opening to do some real counseling. That was like 10% of my time, really. And so, I wasn't necessarily looking to leave. I was just kind of like feeling unhappy. And then things were happening and an opportunity came up where my buddy was like, hey, we're hiring out in San Diego for a staffing role. You'd be great at it. You don't necessarily have to have a bunch of experience, so I can throw your name in the hat if you want. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. San Diego sounds great. I'm ready to get out of here. And so ended up getting it. And I was like, oh my God. And then the guy was like, when he gave me the job offer, he's like, you need to be out here next Tuesday. Like, so that's why it happened so fast. And I went to Mr. Baxter, the principal, and I was like, hey man, I got a job offer. And I had discussed with him. He's cool. Back then he was kind of one of my mentors. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey man, the show goes on.
Okay.
Make yourself happy. It was some of the best advice. He goes, make yourself happy. The show here is going to go on. We're going to miss you tremendously, but it's going to go on. And it's more important for you in your life to be happy. If you're not happy what you're doing, what are you doing? So I was like, man, wow, thank you so much. So I didn't even know really that, like, it wasn't something in my mind that was like, it's time to go. But all the factors kind of played into it where it's like, yeah, I could try that. And I also thought like, I can come back to counseling if I have to. That was kind of like in the back of my mind. Like if this doesn't work out, I got a master's in counseling. I can come back to counseling. And so that's kind of how that happened. It just kind of was really fast. And I know people around Lansdowne was like, where'd Mr. Blackmore go? And I was just gone because it was about a week. Really. So I felt bad about that.
I just remember.
Yeah.
I just remember coming because I was an AVID tutor.
Yeah.
On and off. And AVID is a study skills program, advancement via individual determination.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember coming back and you weren't there. And was like, where's Mr. Blackmore? Yeah. But I remember thinking like, good. I didn't know the circumstance, but I said, good for you. I just kept saying like good. And then when I was on Facebook and found you on Facebook, I was like, let me friend Mr. Blackmore on Facebook.
I do remember that.
But I
connected. Yeah.
Right. The thing that I appreciate with that communication with Mr. Baxter at the time is I think, and this may not work for every scenario, but it is important. If you already know that you're unhappy, why not invite sometimes the people who, sometimes they're your supervisors, but to invite your mentors into the conversation with you so that you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to have these conversations alone.
Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, I don't think there's any accidents. It's like that was for a purpose to kind of teach me that chasing money and chasing these ego things that's not the answer. You got to get back to you and yourself. And the time in San Diego was great, but super stressful. I've never been that stressed before. I needed that lesson. I needed that experience to realize that that's not the answer. It really wasn't.
And what I also hear you saying, we say this a lot now. It's like, active listening. I hear you saying.
Yeah, that's right. Counseling technique.
Also this idea, this idea of open. that's one thing that I'm learning now, is that opportunities will come and you have to be open to accept them.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful, because I do believe what's for you won't pass you, and all of those things, as people say, but to be fully open, fully present is so powerful.
And, I'm a big believer that our thoughts create our world.
Right.
Thoughts become things. And so we have that control. And, people think it's like they're always thinking they need more, right? People think I need more, whatever, need more.
Right.
But what that does to the universe gives back to what you're putting out. So if you're putting out, I need more, it's going to give you that needy energy, right?
Right.
And so, like, if you're generating thoughts of giving, like giving of service, or giving your time, or giving of yourself, or giving things, whatever, then the universe is going to respond with more giving back to you. And so it all starts in your mind, and it all starts in your thoughts. And so people get stuck in these ego thoughts that, and they forget that we're all here to serve, and we're all here to help each other, but they get greedy and ego, and then they go down these wrong roads. And that's pretty much what I did when I left counseling, was chasing those ego messages. I need to be more. I need this. I need that. And back to that definition of insanity, it's like, that was insane. Thinking I needed things that I didn't have, when really we have everything we need already. So it's like if you can change your thoughts, you can change your life. And that's some good advice that I've gotten in my life, was change your thoughts, change your life. And it sounds so simple, right? But it's not. It's complicated, because our thoughts become automatic. Our subconscious drives like 95% of our behavior. And it's very difficult to change your subconscious. All those messages we had from the day we were born up until now, those are all things in our subconscious that may be good, maybe bad. It's like, but if things aren't going the way you want them to be, or the way if things are bad, then a lot of that is unconscious programming that needs to be reversed. And really, the way to do that is through therapy. Chiropractic adjustments help with that. Deep meditation, but it's not easy.
And so let's talk about, so you talked about Mr. Baxter as a mentor, but who else? Who are your mentors? And how did you choose them, or did they choose you?
Mentorship is an interesting topic also. I believe that I try to see everybody as a mentor. Anybody I meet, I feel like I have something to learn from everybody out there. So when I meet new people, I'm trying to figure out what can we learn from each other? Like, how can we mentor each other? Good. Even if it's the first time I met the person, right? Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes you actually build something. But I'd say the biggest impacts right now in my life are two main people. One guy has no idea who I am. He's a famous author, Dr. Wayne Dyer, who I've just identified with his writings and everything he's done since I started studying psychology. So he's always been in the back of my mind, things he said. And the other one is my personal doctor, Dr. Murado, who's a chiropractor, saved my life and changed my life completely. Like, unbelievable. And we kind of found each other. I threw my back out and got referred to him from a friend. And I just moved here from San Diego. And he taught me so much. I mean, it's unbelievable what I've learned from him and how my life has changed because of him. And most of that is about our brain-body connection, our central nervous system, and how we are what we eat, basically, like how to properly nourish your body. And that if you're not nourishing yourself, your brain's not going to work right. You're not going to be the most effective person you can be. And so it all starts within you. And one of the things that he said that always sticks with me is that true health and wellness is created from the inside out and the top down. So you focus on inside, like what are you putting in your body? These things just kind of come together. And it's like, I'm so grateful for him. And And like I said, mentorship is an interesting topic. It's like I said earlier, that everybody is a mentor. Everybody has that in them, because everybody has something that they can teach somebody else, even if they don't know it. There's things that we can learn from everybody. And I think that too many people get in their own way with that. They, especially, interpersonal conversations, people are so quick to think about, what am I going to say next? And then they have no idea what the other person's saying. So they can't even pick up any messages, because they're too worried about their ego saying, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. Let me tell you all about me. And it's like, that's not how you grow. You grow from learning from each other, I think. And that, people somehow have this innate or inner pull or something to, when they're meeting people or when they're discussing things with people, to kind of diarrhea the mouth and just tell them all about them, but not hear the messages, because they're too worried about their perception. They're worried about the other person perceives them. And so they're not actually focused on the words or the message or what they might be missing, So,
right.
And so I try to view everybody. I try to learn all the time. You never stop learning, and it's out messages and things are out there. You just have, back to the open thing. You just have to be open to it and let it happen. Surrender to the flow. Just kind of flow with it and let it go. The other mentor I mentioned, like I said, he doesn't know me, but I found him when I was in school.
And so, this whole mind, body, and soul synergy that you're talking about is so powerful. And I can talk about this all day, but we have a few more questions.
Right.
So you talked a little bit about balance, but I would love to know what grounds you.
Grounding. Yeah, that's good. That's big. I'd say I find it in my daily routines, really. My wife and I, when we get up, we meditate in the mornings together, and then we discuss our gratefuls. What are we grateful for? And you can't repeat something you said the day before. So you got to come up with new things to be grateful for.
That's good.
And so we start our days grounded with, what are we grateful for? You always have to think about, for me personally, and I think that's one way to quickly change a negative mindset. If you find yourself in a funk, start thinking about what you're grateful for, and then you can't be mad about that. I mean, it's so that's why we start our day with 10 to 15 minutes of sometimes guided meditations. Sometimes we just sit in silence and think on our own. And then I have two stepdaughters, just turned 8 and about to be 5. And so the 5-year-old especially is she's so close. They're so much closer to source, because they're so young. They haven't been contaminated by all the world that we have. And so the messages that come out of her are so pure. And the other day she said, out of nowhere, now this is not prompted, out of nowhere, she goes, do you know what the strongest thing is? I was like, no, Logan, what's the strongest thing? She goes, love. I'm like, you're right. Where did that come from? Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's the strongest thing is love. And I'm like, that's a 4-year. She was 4 at the time. I'm like, that's a 4-year-old telling me that's the strongest thing.
Wow.
And she didn't even. I said, Logan, where did you hear that? That's a real powerful message. Where did you hear that? She goes, my brain told me. So that's such a grounding message for me. Because we can get in our own heads and start thinking about what we got to do and stressful things. So that's one way for sure, is just talking to the kids. Sometimes I'll go outside just by myself and just look at nature and appreciate nature. Try to do it barefoot.
Yeah.
And that, kind of just ways to get out of your own head when you find yourself needing balance, is to get away from yourself and find a way to serve. That helps too. If you can find a way to give to somebody or help somebody with something, get out of your own head. I think that is definitely a way that people do that too. And the morning routine is huge. How you start your day is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
Because it determines how your day is going to go, really. So, of course, you still have bad days, right? But it's what you do with that, and how you handle that, So, what about you?
That's good.
How do you find balance?
That's a good question. So for me, all kinds of different ways. So for me, it actually starts with how I go to bed. And so I try to, and it's been a little bit harder lately, but I actually try to spend each day that I like, if I were to die today, it's like I've done everything that I've wanted to do and to go to bed content. And so
Yes.
that always feels good. So I don't feel like I'm missing anything. What you'll do for tomorrow will be taken care of tomorrow. And so with COVID, I wasn't able to, it was just so stressful. And then losing
Yeah.
so many family members, it was like for months, I lived in fear because it was in a 6-week span, I lost 3 family members. And it was like the people who we thought were going to pass didn't pass yet, and the people we had no idea was like a whirlwind. And so once I just stopped listening to the noise, even sometimes in
Yeah.
our own families, which I
Mm-hmm.
love them, and
Yeah.
they'll probably hear this one day, but to really get back to my source. And for me, it was really, really going back to my like prayer and meditation,
Mm,
getting back into yoga,
yeah.
and having all the things together. So,
Yes.
doing those things at the end of the day so I feel good. And then when I get up in the morning, the great thing about teaching online, and I don't like a schedule, and so I can wake up when I want to wake up unless I
Yeah.
have something to do. And to just be grateful about my life. Like I'm just so like I get up singing around the house
Nice. That's great.
and just feeling so secure in myself and like acknowledging that. And since I'm with my parents right now and just having these very like, and they're both in retirement age, and so really having these like amazing conversations in the morning about what did we dream about, what's going on in the news, what are we rejecting, what are we receiving, what are we eating. And so having those kinds of things, because my parents were both in the military and so regimented,
Oh yeah, I know all about
to
that.
be able to, yeah, to see them at ease,
Yeah, that's
or
nice
for them to say like, what time did you go to bed, and not to be like shame, but like, did you rest, like what, don't let this stuff stress you. And so
because they care, right?
that's a large part. Yeah.
You've said it
Go ahead.
a few times or alluded to it. Back to one of the things that Dr. Morato had mentioned to me, that everything is inside out. So balance, especially, you have to balance on the inside, and that's one thing that I put a big focus on is my not only my morning routine but my morning nutrition. I drink a lot of water in the morning, and it's a green drink that I make with lots of different superfoods,
Yeah.
and I drink that every day. And
Yeah.
and then I have coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So like the coffee's not great, but it's important to do all that other stuff before you drink coffee. Another
Right.
reason I'm so grateful for Dr. Morato is he's taught me all these things about how to balance yourself.
Yeah.
And once you balance on the inside,
Yeah.
your outside becomes balanced too. So it all starts with you inside.
Yeah. When I tell you, like, once I came to myself, life, it's almost, it sounds wild. And it's like the trees are greener. It is like
Yes.
food tastes better. It is like I absorb things. Like I enjoy movies more. Everything just it's almost like there was not saying I didn't live before, but it feels like now that I'm getting more balanced, I'm not only able to, and I'm able to realign. So when I know something is off, I'm able to like adjust. But it's almost like I just now started living. And I know my therapist always says, like, you can't negate all the past, which is true. But I feel like at 33, my life has just begun in ways that is just, I feel so excited. Like I get up and I like jump out the bed excited. And I haven't
You're
done
on the
that
right path.
probably since high
That's great.
school. And I didn't miss any time. And that's one thing that grounds me, is to know that, yeah, there might have been people younger than me that, married kids, all this other stuff, but I know that I'm so comfortable in my journey and where I am, and I'm proud of myself. And that took a long time, because like you said, we're always chasing. We're always, I'm working on my 4th degree, and like, oh, I have all these certificates and all these great things, and they're cool, and all these degrees, but it's like, and that's great, and I'm grateful. But, being able to create art now, being able to really do some things that I really love, is giving me like a new win. I just feel like a new person.
Nice. I love hearing that. That's so great.
It just, yeah.
It's like, following that enthusiasm, and then just see where it leads you. Waking up like that is huge. That's when you can be excited just to be alive, and just to be excited to see the birds flying outside, or whatever. Finding beauty in the littlest things creates more of that. Then you start noticing more, and then that becomes what you see, instead of, you can go either way. It's all up here.
Yeah, it's great. I was just telling my therapist, and it's so interesting because you never know where these conversations go. But I feel like a sense of, we talk about healing in the journey, but I also feel whole in a different way, in a way that's like, not only am I sure of myself, but I'm certain I'm not missing anything in my life. But I want to get to the fun section. So I can't remember. Do you listen to hip hop at all?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
Okay, I couldn't remember. Okay, so the fun section is, because I love hip hop, is the top 5 dead or alive rappers. And so for you, who is in your top 5, and in no particular order?
Yeah, no particular order. Okay.
And
Well,
can
I
be
grew up in
groups
the
too.
90s. What's that?
Okay. I said, and they can be groups too.
Okay. So, growing up in the 90s, I identify I'd say the top 5, maybe 6 would be Biggie, Tupac,
Okay.
Dre, Snoop, and then probably Jay-Z, and then Eminem.
Okay.
Eminem, he's interesting. I just think he's so talented. Some of the messages he's, rapping about, I don't necessarily agree with, but the way he's able to flow, and the way his brain just, the way he rhymes words that don't rhyme. They're like, how did you do that?
Right.
So yeah, I love him too. But yeah, so I'd probably say no particular order.
Right.
Biggie, Tupac, Dre, Snoop, Jay-Z, Eminem. What about you?
Right. Okay. So when I recorded Another Day, I had a different list. I'm gonna just keep switching it up. So yeah, Snoop is in my top because in my top 5. So being in the military, we used to live in Hawaii, and my sister was really into West Coast rap. And she had the whole and I was gonna do that, but my shirt wasn't ironed. But like, do the whole, like, because I have this West Coast looking plaid shirt, and she did the black eyeliner that everyone was doing on their, lip liner and all that with the gloss.
Oh, right.
So yeah, so definitely Snoop, definitely Jay-Z. His bravado and confidence is so intoxicating.
Yeah.
I love, since I'm from here, I love the Clips. They came out in 2001 and that was like when Lansdowne first opened. Everyone was beating on the table with the Pharrell beat, and we all like made our own mix, our own freestyles to the song. Love them. And their rap was so gritty, even though, talking about hustling, even though Jay-Z talks about hustling too, theirs was a little bit more gritty, which was such a stark contrast from my real life being in suburbia. Then I would say probably someone that's a little bit more recent now. I love her confidence, Meg Thee Stallion. I just think that she is just so confident and down to earth, and she's a college student, which I appreciate.
Nice.
And then someone as of late that I've been listening to is two people is Toby. Well, they're kind of like a group, but Toby Nwigwe, his wife Fats, and then Nell, who's their producer. They're out of Houston. They do they're more like grassroots, and so I really like they're actually more mainstream now. And then I would add now Rhapsody. I love she's from North Carolina, and she brings in that the 80s women flow in terms of like the big bamboo earrings, the mixture of masculine and feminine clothes, and just very, yeah, she's, yeah, I would say those are my people.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was the girl you mentioned?
So it's Toby Nwigwe and Fats, his wife. Her name is Fats. I can't remember what her birth name is, and Nell.
Okay. What about the one
And
before
so,
that? The girl before that.
Oh, Rhapsody.
Rhapsody, yeah. I wanted to check her
Rhapsody.
out.
Yeah, especially if you're from the 90s. I mean, not from the 90s, but especially you like 90s hip hop. She gives you the transition, like in the 80s when it was like, my mic sounds nice, like that whole like hippity hop rap versus the more I would say the more like Scarface, the more like mobster rap before we got to that place.
Yeah.
She really, I think, has that great nostalgic feel. And she's also signed to Rock Nation. And she's much more lyrical. And I ebb and flow with conscious rap, because if I'm driving down the street, I don't really want to listen to like all this deep 5%er rap, not driving down the street. If I'm in the house chilling, yeah, so it changes. But we have come to the end of the episode. This has been so exciting. I thank you so much. I want to make sure you get all your flowers. And I just appreciate you in my life. I thank you that 16 years later, I was just telling my dad, I was like, Mr. Blackmore from Lansdowne. He's like, oh yeah, Mr. Blackmore from Lansdowne. And that's why I even still call you Mr. Blackmore, not because we're actually closer to age than I realized, but because I still, give you that honor and that credit. Like, you have been impactful, because I mean, you could have make or break, my experience to even think about the college setting, because I know a lot of people who had hater guidance counselors. And so I really just appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you.
Do you have any
honored
parting words?
Yeah, I'm just going to say I'm honored to even be invited to talk with you on this. I think it's been great. I'm so proud of you and like what you've done and what you're going to be doing. You're just getting started. Like it's exciting. It's super exciting.
Thank you.
So I'm just honored to be here, and to anybody out there that's listening to this, that's, struggling or in a place where it's like they don't know what to do or they can't find themselves, it's think about your thoughts. What are you thinking about? The universe, if you're demanding a bunch of stuff from the universe is going to demand a bunch of stuff from you. You got to think of it differently. Like, the more you give of yourself, the more will be given to you.